All right, so we talked about the four pieces of information that you need to have to set price. Those were pricing objectives, costs, demand estimates, and competition's pricing. So let's start with pricing objectives. There are a number of pricing objectives, and your book talks about a number of those. The first one that the book talks about is profit maximization. For many companies, they want to set price at a point at which profits are maximized. That is, a price at which their profit, that is, their revenues minus their costs, are at the highest point. Okay, if you set price too low, your profit isn't maximized, and if you set your profit too high, your profit's not maximized. And so many companies are interested in profit maximization. This also goes back to that concept of maximizing shareholders' wealth. Another pricing objective might be revenue maximization. And companies might focus on revenue maximization because they are in a situation where they need more cash. They need more of a cash flow. And so for them, the goal would be to make sure that they maximize their revenue. Now, the price at which revenue is maximized is typically lower than the price at which profit is maximized. The only time that this is different would be if there were no variable costs. The third approach is a market penetration objective. A market penetration objective would be setting price so that I get as much market share as possible. Of course, this would require that I set price something relatively close to the variable cost of the product. And there are some other pricing objectives. Your book added 3 more pricing objectives that at least ought to be discussed because they might show up on an exam. One is unit volume pricing. And of course, this is the idea of trying to match capacity with demand. And of course, so I try to set a price at which my demand and my production capacity are equal. This, of course, is especially true for and especially important for services, which, of course, as we talked about last week, are perishable even if they are not consumed. The second approach is called a survival approach, right? So this is a situation where a company is in dire need of generating cash to keep their doors open, okay? And so they might do some sort of a very fast fire sale to jump revenues as fast as they can for a very short period of time. This is called a survival approach. Of course, the idea behind this is minimize costs, maximize any potential revenues. And then the third approach might be a social responsibility objective. This comes into play for people like drug companies who could charge, in some cases, almost anything for a new drug. But if they're socially responsible, they might not overcharge people who can't afford it. So in some cases, what you will see drug companies doing, for example, is offering the drug at a discounted rate for those who really don't have any insurance or can't afford to pay for the prescription of that particular drug. Here's a little pricing example that shows 3 different prices, one of which maximizes revenue, profits, and market penetration or market share. Okay, so and this is just a very simple example. So my demand is either at $50, my demand is 100 units. At $40, it goes up to 150 units. And at $33, it goes up to 170 units. Now, this should make some sense to you from your economics class. That is, the lower the price, the more units I sell. All right. The cost of goods sold is $30 a piece. So the profit margin is, in the case of $50, $20. In the case of $40, $10. In the case of $33, the profit margin is only $3. Now, in terms of revenue, the $40 price maximizes my revenue. The $50 price maximizes my profit. And the $33 price maximizes my units sold. That is 170 units. So you can see by this example that different prices will result as a result of what the pricing objective might be. This is why pricing objectives are so important. And you can work through the numbers on this table and you'll see that they are correct.